Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Leslie Blevins with Enilda Clinic at enildaclinic.com. And today I'm here with very special guest. I have two board certified behavior analysts, and they are the owners of Pacific Northwest Behavior. They are a behavior company that goes out and works with mostly children with autism, but also children with a few other types of disabilities as well. And I have Kourtney Pickens and Steven Sikora. They are becoming friends. I feel like I interact with you guys more and more as time goes by. I've only been in Spokane for a couple of years, and they're amazing. I really, really love their approach. I know in the autism world, there are preferences for how ABA is used and if it even is used. And so today we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we're also going to go into differential reinforcement. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and hit subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or sign up for the email list if you're watching this at enildaclinic.com/learning. You can then get any learning videos as soon as they come out. I cover all kinds of child development videos, and recently I have been talking to lots and lots of experts about all kinds of things. Okay, Kourtney and Steven, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so first, can you just kind of go over what's your style of providing behavior therapy?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Kourtney.
Oh, goodness.
Hey.
Okay. We provide ABA therapy in Spokane, Washington. We have for about 2.5 years. We provide in-home services only currently. We take a very naturalistic approach to ABA while still maintaining all of the ethical procedures that are applicable to our science in the field.
Awesome. Okay, let's go into a couple of things that you just said. What is a naturalistic approach to ABA?
Good question.
Yeah, so most folks who have gone through any kind of ABA training are pretty well informed about how to run a clinical practice. I think the clinical practice is what a lot of folks experience when they Google search ABA, or if they're looking into any like discrete trial training or even some horror stories. You're looking at these people learning in boxes. And when Kourtney and I started PNW, one of our goals was to say, like, we don't need this little tiny space to teach all these great skills. We would rather be approaching our clients, our kids, our adults, our families in environments where it means the most to them. And so for those folks, and just like for most of us watching the video and out there in the world, we like to live our lives in our homes, in our communities, at our grocery stores. That's really where most of this stuff matters. So when an ABA group is focused on naturalistic environment training, what we're really trying to do is find as many relevant skills that we can teach in the community versus relying so much on flashcards or relying so much on giving treats. We'd rather that the child learns that they love going down a slide. And so they'll say more slide versus, saying, say cookie, say cookie. So we really try to focus on broadening that experience of learning versus maybe teaching it a little bit more like dogmatic or pragmatically in a clinical setting or in a smaller contrived setting. So it can be a little challenging at times to always get it right, which I think was the second part of when we started PNW, is really focusing on giving practitioners a fair amount of grace to be okay with not getting perfect data points, and to be okay with not getting 100 trials. It's like, just create meaningful opportunities for reinforcement. And I think that should be a highlight of any ABA company, is a meaningful opportunity for reinforcement. And we just felt like the natural environment was way better at setting that up for everyone to be successful.
Yeah, I really love that approach, because I know within the autistic community, there's definitely clear pushback about the use of applied behavior analysis, which is ABA. I don't know that we ever actually said it. And I think a lot of it has to do with historically how it's used, but then there's, even whenever we say that, there's pushback that, the validity of autistics' feelings about even just now how it's used, and the fact that sometimes even just reinforcement being withheld and utilized in order to teach skills might not be the most ethical thing, because would we do that with people who aren't autistic? Things like that. And so I even want to ask you a little bit more about just reinforcement in general in that naturalistic setting, because what I get from this, I just want to make it clear to anybody watching, whenever you talk about a child learning how to access going down the slide, I feel like that is a child learning how to access having more opportunities to play, a greater variety of ways to play. And even by doing that, having opportunities to learn how to play with more peers. And so that's reinforcement, being able to slide, learning how to do that. And then I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that as well.
Yeah, one thing that we really enjoy doing at P&W is being in home and in a home setting gives us so many opportunities to embed ourselves in a reinforcing environment. Your bedroom with all of your toys, or the kitchen with all of your snacks, or your backyard with your play set and your swing and your trampoline is going to be so much more reinforcing for you, as I know it is in my own home. And it makes me feel comfortable and motivated to achieve or earn that prize. Like I work all day and come home and I've earned the prize of dinner for myself, or whatever it may be. You're watching a movie, and one thing that we really enjoy of being in that natural setting of home environments, or going to Target, or going to the grocery store, a session and an opportunity to go to McDonald's and order a snack, gives you that just internal and naturalistic motivation to find things reinforcing versus contrived.
And I think to couple onto that, I think there's also a form of reinforcement that a lot of people maybe don't understand is reinforcing, and that a lot of maybe old schooler BCBAs are reluctant to use. And I think that that's negative reinforcement, which really just means that you're able to take yourself out of something that you don't want to do, right? And for us, that really creates that situation where if we have that in our programs, the ability for someone to appropriately say, like, I don't want to do this right now, please, like, can I just take a break? That's extremely reinforcing. And it also, I think, prompts and motivates the child or the adult, their ability to use their own consent for services. And for us to realize, like, okay, like, I'm not going to force this program right now, because even if I had all the amazing things in the world that I think this kid wants, or that this kid has showed me that they want, if they don't want to be here, they don't want to be here, man. So I think focusing on that negative reinforcement, again, it sounds like it's bad, but it's actually good, right? We all need to take a break from stuff that makes us feel a little icky. Utilizing that as a strategy to help kids learn is important too, because historically that is where you'll find some of the more maladaptive behaviors, because we often don't teach people enough to say, like, it's okay to take a break, or it's okay to say no, or it's okay to not want to do this. And I think that that's a very new way for a BCBA or an ABA therapist to be thinking. And I think a lot of that is coming out of very recent research from guys like Greg Hanley. So anybody who's interested in more about client assent versus just parents giving consent for services, and by assent, I mean, like, you want to participate in our services, check out work by Greg Hanley, because our team really focuses a lot on that. And again, teaching our BCBAs and our practitioners, it's okay to let the child say no, right? It's not going to be bad reinforcement if you let them up if they're angry. Like, no. You clearly, if your child's having a bad time in therapy, we're clearly doing something wrong. So we want to focus on how can we get that child to engage with us versus us forcing our program onto our kids. So that's another part of reinforcement that I think, again, is just misunderstood and maybe not represented enough in our BCBA culture.
I 100% agree, 100%. And again, that's why I love working with you guys, because I see how you guys really get it. And there's a lot of respect for the individual that you're working with, and helping that individual to have an overall positive experience and to learn ways to access more and more positive experiences in their life, which in my mind, that's what all therapy is about, right? It's about having a better, fun, more adaptive life. And so, yeah, that's why I really enjoy working with you guys.
Well, thanks,
so yeah, and I just love the whole consent piece, because I know that for sure is a big part of what many autistic people are talking about right now and wanting us as providers to listen to. So thank you for all of that. So I know today we're going to talk about differential reinforcement. What is that?
I think it's cool to frame. I mean, in our field, we love fancy words for really simple stuff. And I think differential reinforcement falls in that like same realm. But when I think of differential reinforcement, all I'm really thinking about is appropriately using reinforcement, right? Because we all know what reinforcement is. And if you don't, it's simply something that increases your behavior in the future, good, bad, or otherwise. Anything you see more and more of is being reinforced. So because I said good, bad, or otherwise, it's important then to realize maybe how to apply that appropriately, right? And how to watch out for maybe pitfalls. And so differential reinforcement has a lot of different types, but for the sake of today, we'll just talk about it generally and maybe some of the easiest and most practical ways that it's used. And I'm sure that anyone watching this will be like, oh yeah, of course, they get degrees for this stuff, because it is kind of a very like simple procedure at the end of the day. So we're happy to share it with you all. But I guess just by definition, before we go a little deeper into it, differential reinforcement, we've already talked about reinforcing contingencies, which is something that is reinforcing. Let's put that up here at the top. This is the reinforcement. I say, hey, Kourtney, do you want some water? And Kourtney says, yeah, I would love some water. And so I give her water, right? It worked. Her words worked. It's reinforcing. Awesome. Let's say down here, I say, hey, Kourtney, you want some water? And she's like, no, I want you to go like eat a shoe. Well, I'm going to probably want to provide something to her to let her know that wasn't what I was expecting, right? I'm not going to give her water for saying go eat a shoe. So what I'm going to do is say something else instead, like, are you sure, Kourtney? Like, I'll leave if you say like leave please or something like that. So without making it too complicated, there's anytime you have a situation where there's two outcomes, one of those outcomes is going to get reinforced, and one of those outcomes is going to be met with some kind of like correction, right? And between those two things, something reinforced and something corrected, we believe that we find a lot of learning and growth, no matter what it is. Again, good, bad, or otherwise, can't prevent how you perceive a reinforcer. That's up to you, of course. So, but where there's reinforcement and consequences, you will find learning. So differential reinforcement really just has us try to find the best combination of awesome and the right combination of let's not try that again, and then has that promote the learning in the future.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like something I'm kind of seeing in this is that correction is also an acknowledgement that Kourtney acknowledged your request.
Right.
That example. And I know with you know, no reinforcement at all, like you might not even acknowledge her request at all. So it's kind of comparing it to no correction, so no instruction at all. Am I right about that, or am I wrong?
Yeah, they used to joke that if you don't provide reinforcement or a negative consequence, which could just be feedback, right? It doesn't have to be aversive. If you don't provide either of those, you leave everything up to chance. So like you just don't know. If you ignored your 2-year-old's request, you don't know what's going to happen next. Some kids are going to go get it for themselves, which may be negative. Some kids are going to get it for themselves, which may be positive. But at the end of the day, if you're engaged in a therapeutic relationship with a good BCBA, those folks should be focused on making sure that you're entering into a reinforcing opportunity more frequently than a correction opportunity. But we still always acknowledge what that behavior was, to answer your question. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I want us to kind of maybe go through like another example that might be really typical for a parent of a young child, so that if I'm the parent, then I really understand what this is going to look like in my day-to-day. And, you know, maybe they have autism or maybe they don't, because, you know, applied behavior analysis works with everybody. I know I use it with everybody, and you guys work with people who don't have autism as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have a parent who just has, like, let's say toddler preschool age children, how might differential reinforcement come into play?
Yeah, I guess I could use an example from my 2-year-old. Actually, my 3-year-old now. She just turned 3. So we were visiting some friends, and our friends have these 2 very cute and active puppies. And even though we have a dog at home, my 3-year-old can't stand these 2 dogs. She screams at the top of her lungs whenever they come into the room, even though they just want to lick her face. And she's like, ah! And she'll run around and try to find myself or my wife. And when she does, she's in tears and she's sobbing and she can't explain herself. And so Claire and I, who want to have a great time at these people's house, decided, okay, let's see if we can help her out here. And so, for better or for worse, and I'll talk about the parenting flaws in this too, because we're not perfect. Let's be real. Claire, my wife, says, "Hey, okay, Ryan, my daughter, I will give you a bag of fruit snacks if you're nice to that dog." Which sounds like a pretty typical thing that any parent would say. I will give you this if you engage in this. If you're nice to the dog, you get this bag of fruit snacks. And as a parent, like, again, that's pretty typical. So what do you think happens? What happens is throughout the day, we get busy. Throughout the day, Ryan meets the dog, and she screams at the dog, and we say, remember, if you're nice to the dog, you get fruit snacks, right? And she goes about the day, she's nice to the dog, but we didn't see it. Okay, that's probably more realistic to a typical case scenario. Like, a parent has said this for that, but we're really only focused on not seeing screaming. Right? And when we see screaming, we will immediately say, hey, remember what you're working for, right? Okay, so on day 2, I get a wild hair, and I recognize that Ryan is being very friendly to the dogs. And so I got that bag of fruit snacks out, and I run over to her and say, hey, Ryan, I love how you're being so happy and playful with those doggies. You're being such a great girl, right? And then I walk away. And an hour later or so, I see her being great with the dogs again. Oh, I run over there. Hey, Ryan, I love seeing you play with the dogs. You're doing such a good job using your words, right? 5 minutes later, the dog comes in and she's screaming at him. Ah! Right? And so I go, Ryan, remember, like, I know that you're a little scared, but remember to use your words with the puppies, right? They understand what you're saying, right? I give her some of that loving feedback. Take a step back again. A couple minutes later, the doggy comes up. She goes, no, doggy, no, doggy. And I'm like, oh, great job using your words, right? So the behavior analyst in me, and my wife's a behavior analyst too, but again, we're not perfect. So and we're on vacation. Vacation brain's real. Right. So the parent is looking for, we're just taking away that negative behavior, but the behavior analyst is looking at, okay, what behavior do I want to reinforce as soon as I see it happen? And hopefully that behavior I'm reinforcing is the one I want to see more of in the future. So my wife's request of, hey, be nice to the dog and you'll get fruit snacks. A behavior analyst breaks that down and says, okay, well, what is nice? Nice is using good words. Nice is using calm hands to pet. Nice is not pulling on tails, right? And I'm looking for every opportunity I can find to give her praise in that moment. And when she fails, I tell her it's okay. I give her that loving corrective feedback, and then we try again, right? And we just keep that in place. So over time, Ryan does better with the dog because she realizes that, I'll still give her love and support if she's upset, but then also she gets this awesome stuff if she engages in these new behaviors. And so that was just an example that happened a couple of days ago. And in anticipation of this conversation, I figured we can break that apart. Because again, it also kind of talks about that parenting like situation where we just want to see bad behavior go away. But part of differential reinforcement means that if we want that bad behavior to go away, we have to also focus on what we're going to reinforce instead. And I think that if we're talking kind of more about maybe some of the flaws in ABA, a lot of parents talk about like, yeah, we had ABA and the therapist told us just to put him in his room or to ignore him if he's doing his behaviors. And I don't like the whole ignore mentality because we're not teaching if we're just ignoring. So again, part of differential reinforcement, ignoring maybe, but likely not, we should be prompting, what do we want to see? And then as soon as we see it, turning our behavior around and saying, yes, that's exactly how you do that. That's exactly how you say hello in the hall at school. That's exactly how you don't cut in line. Like, perfect, I'm proud of you. Versus only waiting for the behavior you don't want to see not happen.
So there's so much in there. I want to like really break this down. There's so much in there that you just said. So one thing that I definitely get this feedback from parents after a few sessions is a parent will say to me, whenever, because this is essentially, to me, this is ABA, this one skill. I just feel like we kind of like tweak it around and make it more advanced, and you guys especially, because you guys are doing the in-home ABA. I don't do it that way. I do more of a clinical ABA. So I kind of just stick to this and tweak it a little bit, but you guys really tweak it. And the big thing that I always hear from parents after a few sessions, whenever they're really getting the hang of it, is they will say, so wait a minute, you're changing my behavior. It's like, yes, we are. Because this really is teaching the parent to pay attention to positive behaviors from their child. Any growth behavior, you want the parent to acknowledge it through whatever the reinforcer is, whether it's praise, the fruit snacks, whatever it might be that works for your child, whatever your child feels good getting. And I love that. I also love that you modeled a correction right there that was maintaining the attachment of the relationship. Recognizing that if the child is upset, if it's fear-based or anxiety or frustration, whatever it might be, that you can still emotion coach your child through that, because your child's learning how to interact with the dog. And that was just such a beautiful example. I really appreciate that example. So good.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, I have so many parents who tell me that their kid doesn't play well with pets. So that was a really good example.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and Leslie, to Steve's example, as I'm thinking of reinforcement and reinforcement in general, I think that the perception out there from the outside world and parents, when you say like, oh, I'm a BCBA, I provide applied behavior analysis therapy, the motivation and the goal behind my science is positive reinforcement. And so often do we have parents that say like, oh, so you're going to bribe my kid to do this.
Right.
And in that situation that Steve said about Ryan, and so you could look at it in so many different perspectives. You could say like, oh, well, they said, if you don't do this, we'll give you this. So if you don't yell at the dog, I'm going to bribe you with fruit snacks. Mm-hmm. Sure. And in a global perspective, like maybe could you make an argument to that? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. However, what Steve and his wife did was that very intentional positive reinforcement strategy that said, okay, well, this is new. She's 3 years old. She's the sweetest 3-year-old little peanut ever. And these dogs are probably pretty scary to her. Standard. She's a little girl. So I'm going to accept that she's fearful, and I'm going to reward her as I see the growth in that positive change in her behavior. So to anyone that says, you know, you're reprimanding or you're giving feedback to not wanting to see that negative behavior, Steve and his wife never took away any of those fruit snacks. They never said like, now you're not going to get them. They used that opportunity to say, okay, now I have to really catch her in the act of trying, putting forth that really big conscious effort in a 3-year-old's little mind. And that even saying like, no, doggy, no. That's better than screaming. That's better than shooing the dog away. That's a positive step in the right direction. To which they said, nice job. That's really great. Do you see how that puppy listens to you? And slowly building up Ryan's confidence over time to say like, oh, you're right. My words are powerful. And when I use my words, the dog does what I want it to do to some degree. It's an animal. But my mom and dad also give me positive praise and accolades. And then at the end of the day, like I get a yummy snack out of it too. Like it's more well-rounded than just if you do this or if you don't do this, I'll give you this. It's increasing confidence. It's adding words to her vocabulary. It's making sure that she realizes that her words hold a lot of merit and people are recognizing it. And so over time, the next time she sees those dogs, in her 3-year-old little brain, she's probably going to say,
maybe the first time, you know, because it'll be scary again because you're 3 years old, but it will just take that small reminder from Steve and his wife to say, Ryan, remember, that puppy knows what you're saying. Just say no, thank you. And she'll be like, oh yeah, okay. And that over time is going to increase that behavior where she's not fearful of those dogs anymore because she's learned through positive feedback and a yummy snack at the end, which just makes everything better in a 3-year-old's life.
And a 34-year-old.
And a 34-year-old, that there's value, and she's grown from that, and she's going to take it and run with it in any dog that she sees.
Yeah.
So positive reinforcement can be looked at in so many different ways. It's how you approach it and the feedback that you're given. And it's that like catch them being good mentality. Tell the child. I do this with my own dog. I will say like, hey, dude, stop ripping a shoe, you know? And he's a dog, so he doesn't really know what I'm talking about. But, you know, like when he's not jumping on people, he gets a nice pet, or he gets positive praise or a treat. And over time, he's not jumping on people anymore because I've given him positive feedback, just like Steve and his wife have given their daughter positive feedback that's made her behavior change positively in the future.
Yeah, and I love everything that you just said, Kourtney. That all of that is just so great. And one of the things that I think is so important in what you just said is that the skill, even though it sounds so simple to be sweet to the dog, I think a lot of parents say that, be sweet to the dog. And they think that even in a 3-year-old's mind, that is a very simple instruction. It's operationalized, right? Like you're teaching it in very tiny steps. So I love whenever you mentioned that, even going from screaming to just saying, no, doggy, no, like that is a huge improvement. And praising just that small step is a good start that a parent might start there with the final goal of being that the child is even more positive with the dog. I just love that because I see that a lot where a parent has a goal for their child to maybe be at some age appropriate level with some skill, but really the child is several years behind. And so the child's going to need a lot more time to practice and is going to progressively move up. And so having that parent to kind of relax and accept small improvement, praising those steps is something I think that really gives a parent a lot more calmness. And allows them to focus on the positive and feel good. It gives them reinforcement.
And I think just naturally as a human, if you look back to your childhood or to a new skill that you're learning as an adult, I think to myself, building a business, for example, I was not born to like naturally know how to build a business. It's taken time, it's taken feedback, it's taken coaching, and it's taken having collaboration and partnership for Steve to be like, I know this is a new skill. I'm not super confident in it either, but try this way, or try approaching or saying something this way. And I think like, oh, okay. So even in a business and a business partnership, Steve differentially or positively reinforces me all the time by saying like, try it this way. It's that corrective feedback that now I'm consciously saying like, you're right. I didn't know how to do that skill before. I didn't necessarily know the definition, just like kids naturally probably don't know like, oh, be gentle. Right. If I just threw out be gentle to a 3-year-old that's never heard that word, well, what does gentle mean? Right. It's showing what gentle looks like. Soft touches, kind words, a calm demeanor. We have, as human beings, have to learn or observe how to do something before we say like, okay, that's how, and then your examples shape up over time for you to build that skill naturally.
For sure.
It doesn't come inherently.
Right.
Depending on the skill, you know, you learn as you grow, but you're learning by observation and feedback, good, better, and different, like Steve had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. I think that there's unfortunately too a lot of judgment and parents, like we get this feedback from parents too. We even get this feedback to each other,
Mhm.
and then we give each other a lot of grace. But I think some of the feedback is like that you have to be successful right away, and that if you take steps back, or someone a very like even a kind BCBA walks into your house and says, just like you said, Leslie, okay, yeah, you want your son to do this, but they're actually like down here. There's a very like tactful way and a very personable way to do that, where you can help people understand that, hey, I'm going to start here, and that's okay. You don't have to run a marathon your first time off the couch, right? That's your big goal, great. And I think that that's part of what I think is the beauty of practicing ABA, is that everyone who's gone through a grad program knows how to shape behavior, but there's not a lot of folks, I think, who can communicate the importance of building off of smaller steps and just being ready to recognize those victories as the victories that they are. And not necessarily like, well, he's still not getting an A in high school or an A in history. And it's like, yeah, but look at how well he writes his essays now. There's always something I think that we're working on that goes under the radar if all we're looking for is an end result. And so I know that we always try to focus on that with our programs is looking at, okay, well, you want to do that. I love that idea. You're going to get there. Let's look at this. Because at the end of the day, back like differential reinforcement, we want to give more reinforcement than corrective feedback, right? And kids who are working on steps that are in their repertoire, that are maybe just a little bit harder than they should be, that are kind of stretching in that direction towards whatever that big goal is, they're going to get more reinforcement doing that and learn faster than if we try to set them over here in the marathon column and say, oh, next week you'll run it faster, don't worry about it, hoping, leaving it to chance that behavior is going to make a huge swing someday. And all of a sudden you're going to walk in on like a Rembrandt, when the day before they were just putting paint on the paper. So again, I think that's some of the tact and beauty of a good ABA practitioner too, is recognizing and communicating that we want to reinforce your kids with whatever it looks like for them. Some kids want to break for reinforcement, like we said earlier. Perfect. We'd rather that 100% of the time than to give feedback.
Yeah, so. I agree with you 100%. I truly believe that learning is a very positive process that feels really good. And I know with my families that for the parents and for the child, there should be a lot of reinforcement going on. And whenever it's not, I think that's why families sometimes, if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to keep up with it. If you think about any kind of learning that you've done as an individual or any kind of big goal you set out, if there's not enough reinforcement in there, then you're probably not going to keep up with it. I mean, that's the definition of it, right? Definition of reinforcement. So yeah, so if you're not building it into the program, then it's not going to happen. And especially for children, if the parent's not receiving reinforcement for those efforts to keep up with the program, then it won't be sustained.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think to your point, Leslie, similarly, we have so many parents throughout our careers, and I'm sure you have the same situation occur to you, that they say, like, a parent that's like really on board, and they're like, okay, well, I did this schedule and I did the token chart and I put all of these reinforcement systems in place and I gave him a gummy worm every time that he said please, and it's still not happening, and he still doesn't know his math facts, or he still can't write his name, and he's 15 years old. Like, what is going on? Like, he should be, like, he's 14 and he's still riding a tricycle. I want him to ride a dirt bike, and we just, as practical practitioners, have to say, but isn't it beautiful that this world allows you to be exactly what you're meant to be? And we don't put these people in a box that say, like, by 22 years old, you should have this skill, you should have this repertoire of skills. We're all different, and that's what makes it so incredibly beautiful. And we use that and take that with great stride for all of our families. Like, I know you want him to do this. We will work our hardest to achieve that, but until that skill is not fun anymore, I don't want to work on it over and over and over and over again where it's miserable and traumatic. I want to reinforce and I want to encourage, but we might get to a point that says, like, maybe he's a typer. Maybe he's going to type his name and he might not write his name, but how beautiful is it that he has other opportunities to still communicate and still type his name out? cool, good for you. It's reinforcing in all aspects. And I think from a parent perspective and from an outside developmental, age and skill level that you need to be at, there are milestones to, like, you have to put milestones in place to like make a comparison or to measure standard or a large group. It's science. But how cool is it that you're also an individual too? And if you don't make that skill, you're still a pretty awesome individual. And it doesn't mean that you can't learn other things or a different way to do that skill in the future. And it might just take you a little bit longer, and we'll find reinforcing ways to help you learn that skill, whatever that skill or however that skill looks like, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed.
For sure. I think I've said this to you guys before, but in my mind, I always feel like ABA is like the most ethical way to live, like with your family, with your significant others and all that, because it's all about increasing the reinforcement in other people's lives. My sister said to me one time, what was it? I think she was watching one of my videos or something. And I said something to her. We were talking on the phone because it's pandemic time, so I have nothing to do but talk on the phone. And so she and I talked a lot. Yep. Yeah. And she made a comment to me. She goes, "Your primary form of communication is praise." And I took it as the biggest compliment. I was like, that is amazing. I love that, because I really do think that like that is like kind of our purpose in life, is to have like these amazing lives that not only are fulfilling for us individually, but where we're seeing and finding the fulfillment in other people and getting to experience that in our relationships. And I just love how I'm so thankful I've gotten to meet you guys, and because I feel like that is a value of your company, and I think that you guys practice in that way. So yeah, yay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you guys would like to share before we wrap up?
Well, I guess just a small shameless plug. We are a behavioral health center of excellence, and we actually had our accreditation extended. So we're really proud about that, and something that it means a lot to us, because we sought that accreditation. We were only about 1.5 years old, and just briefly, that accreditation, Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, was designed in part by some of the leading ethicists in the ABA field. So people who really have been focusing on making ABA a very ethical and practical and personable experience. And they made this huge set of guidelines for companies to follow. And we were so proud that our company of 1.5 years at the time met those guidelines, and that we met them again the second time around. So I think it really, again, it's a shameless plug, but it really, I think, validates the work that Kourtney and I have done to put together something that I think represents more than what you see on TV or on YouTube about ABA. It really is a program that we're proud of and we stand behind. And not only do we think it, but the people who are also ethical in our field would verify that we're doing a really cool job over here. And again, we're proud of us. There's only 13 companies in Washington State that are BHCOE, and we're the only one on the east side. So again, we're super proud to be leaders in that field and in that way. So and it does guide our work. So yeah, I just thought we'd share that, because again, we're really proud of it, and it touches to how much we're passionate about this group of ours, and the lengths that we're willing to go to make sure that we're doing it right every time we walk out the door.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you did share that. Is that a national certification or accreditation? Okay, so then parents who are interested in really having the highest level of ethical ABA practice, because I mean, my videos are watched all around the country. So of course, I would love for people in Spokane to reach out for you. But if somebody in Alabama or something is reaching out, what was it again? What was it called, the certification?
Yeah, so it's great you mentioned that, because you can search for a local BHCOE provider based on your state and region. So the website is BHCOE.org. bhcoe.org, O-R-G. And that'll give you all the information about what it takes to get credentialed, the types of groups that are, and then also, again, if you're in Alabama and you want to visit the website and see who in your region is BHCOE credentialed, you can do that. We actually had an employee who we loved, and she moved back to the East Coast with her family. And she let us know on her last day, like, hey, Steve and Kourtney, I'm only applying to companies that are BHCOE. And it just really like, yes, you know, because that you want for folks, parents, staff, BCBAs, everybody to be striving to work for groups that I think are doing their best. And not to say that groups that are not, because it's a totally optional thing, right? So we're not saying that we're the only ones in town that are doing this, right? It is a cool opportunity to get resources if you're looking, and if you don't know where to start, at least start with folks who have maybe taken that step, and they can guide you, because one of the things is to have an active waitlist referral system. So even if we can't take you, we're hopefully sharing other people in town who will. So it's not a singular effort, of course.
And you know, I think it to go back to your point about it being an optional certification, I think it's important as BCBAs that we are being intentional in our thought process and setting up business practices that are thinking about ethics, and also just the consideration of the history of ABA, especially recently as adult autistics are really becoming much more vocal and taking a stand against practices that ABA has done that has been traumatizing. And so I know I speak for myself, and I'm sure that you guys agree with me that we would never ever want to traumatize anybody. That is totally against the intention of any work that we're doing. And so I think it's important that we're being open-minded and always doing everything we can to do the very best practice that we can. So I think it's admirable that you guys are doing that certification and doing as much as you can towards that goal.
And I value the fact that they're speaking up too, because they should. You know, if you receive services that make you feel against what you hope to get, you should let people know. You shouldn't be silent about those traumas, or just across the board too. Like, don't be silent about that kind of stuff. You need to, you know, call people out and help our industry grow that way too. Because we came from a weird place, right? So a lot of the new stuff we're doing is really respects the human being, the individualism, even the mentalism of everything. But I can't say that was the way 15 years ago. So it's likely that some of the adults now are recalling some of our weaker history. And so it's good to bring that up. I think it's very powerful, and I'm glad that there's courage out there to say those types of things. And if anyone ever caught us doing that at PNW, I hope they would let us know, because it would be, we would feel very much remorse about that, and we would change it immediately.
You're right. And our field has come very far in the last 15, 20 years, and we recognize that there's still a long ways for us to go. It's an ever growing, learning, changing science, because humans are changing over time. And I would encourage those adults that maybe had a bad experience to reach out to a local ABA company that may be BHCOE certified or not, because again, it's a choice. But an ethical company will encourage and open up that communication and that conversation, and honestly invite those people that maybe had a poor experience in the past to say, like, I understand and you are validated in your past experience, but come watch what ABA looks like now. Come watch and see what we do, so you can rest peaceful at night knowing that there are really good people in this world and ethical practitioners that want to see meaningful change and individual growth in a person. And history doesn't have to repeat itself. We're growing in, hopefully, an ever going upward trend.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. So good, so good. So where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about your company and getting services with you?
Yeah, so we have a website, of course, at pnwbehavior.com. I'm sure Leslie will put it in the comment section of the video. But if you look up PNW Behavior or Pacific Northwest Behavior, you'll definitely find us. You can link to us on Facebook and Instagram as well. We don't have an active social media presence. A lot of that is just out of professional considerations and our own ethical boards. So, but it is a place to connect with us. We're really responsive to emails and any messages that come across those platforms. And you can also give us a call. The information is listed on our website. And yeah, we hope to meet you, some of you all digitally or in person or a combination of both someday.
Yeah. Great. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for the wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it. And for everybody out there watching, be sure to go to enildaclinic.com/learning to sign up for the email list so you can get more expert learning videos or subscribe on YouTube. All right, everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.